Welcome to the Mary Beth Konis podcast. I'm your host, Mary Beth Konis. In this episode, we are continuing to the next phase of repair after rupture in our relationships. We'll answer questions like, what is the point of repair? How do we start the conversation after we've regulated our emotions? And what happens when I get overwhelmed again when I'm trying to repair? As always, make sure to subscribe and share and drop a positive review wherever you're listening. All right, we are continuing the conversation about ruptures and repairs within relationships. If you haven't listened to the first episode on this topic, make sure and go back to episode 7 and listen to that before jumping into this one. That lays the foundation a little bit more for what we're diving into today. So, continuing from last time, let's talk about once we have identified within ourselves this pull to flee, fight, fawn, or freeze. What do we do? What do we do with this? And this is really important because we're not going to be able to actually repair and get into these conversations until we've self-regulated. Okay, this is a little emotion regulation teaching for you today. But what we want to do is notice in our body when it comes up, oh, here it is. I'm ready to get the F out of here. Or I'm just completely shut down. I can't think. I'm flooded. I'm absolutely frozen. There's a few different responses there. Recognize what yours are. And this is going to be, so just really quickly, I'll breeze over them. Flee is obviously you want to run, get the hell out of here. And it's really like a visceral, like, I'm looking for my keys. I gotta exit the room. I just can't, right? Okay. Fight is defensiveness, combative. I want to get in there, argue every point. It's semantics. It's getting after topics that aren't even the actual root issue. We're going through every little thing. Well, you said it this way, and you always do that. That's the fight. Okay. The fawn, this is kind of a newer one that people are just now really starting to understand, and that is you just concede. It's literally you do whatever it takes to keep the peace. That's agreement. That's, kind of what we used to call being like kind of like a doormat. It's whatever that the stronger personality is needing or wanting. That's what we do. And then freeze is just completely shut down. Like we're not really hearing, we're not really thinking, we're not really in this moment anymore. We've dissociated, we're no longer online. We all have at least one. Some of us have multiple. Sometimes that's situational as well. So first, when we're feeling the rupture occurring, I want us to notice how we're feeling in our bodies. And know that it's okay. We're just going to accept it at this point and say, oh, I see myself doing that. Okay, we're going to observe without judging, fixing, criticizing. Oh, I got to do this. I got to get out of this. I can't do that. Just say, oh, it's happening. Here I am. Yeah, I feel overwhelmed, overstimulated. I feel threatened, whatever it is. We're just observing and allowing that space. And I say that, right? And when you're in the middle of a screaming match, like who does that? So this is where you set this up ahead of time with your child or your partner or whoever and just say, hey, I'm going to try this new thing next time when we get into it. I may just say, hey, I need to take a pause and I'm going to take 5 or 15 or 20 minutes to go regulate. And then I will come back to the conversation. And then you set a time to come back to the conversation. So it's not an open-ended, I'm getting out of here. It's, hey, I'm going to take a pause. I'm getting overwhelmed. And I need to go regulate myself for a minute. So I don't put that on you because that's not your job. And then you go and you take the space. Okay. And this is where we practice the tools, the breath work, the meditation, the air boxing, the whatever. If you need to go on a really quick power walk, shift that energy of those emotions. And then when you feel like you're back online, your brain is back, your logic is back, when the urgency has left, it's not so everything and I have to fix this now and I can't do. When that has kind of subsided a little bit, then you know you're ready to start thinking a little bit more creatively and logically, and that's when you can come back to the conversation. The rule in my house is if one or both of us is charged, we will not be discussing anything. Nothing productive comes from a charged conversation. And that's it. One person, all it takes is one person to be charged, not going to be productive, because we've all been that person and we've all talked to that person in that state. It's like a brick wall. Like, they're not hearing because they're in the reptilian brain that's only wired for survival. So everything is a fight, everything is a threat, everything is the worst, everything is the most urgent. When that happens, you're not going to get the creativity, the compassion, the ability to empathize and open up and problem solve. That's not online. So we got to wait till that comes back online before we can start the repair. Okay? Very, very important keys here. And this takes practice. I cannot emphasize that enough. This takes practice to do. You will not be able to do this the first time you try. It will not go seamlessly. It just doesn't, because it's a little funky and clunky and messy. And I'm saying that not because I don't believe in you. I do believe in you. If I can do it, literally you can do it. I'm what they call a recovering emotional addict. Okay. I was literally addicted to the highs and lows and throes of my emotions. You can read all about that in my book, Shadow Dance. It's on Amazon. Okay. If I can do it, I know that you can do it. It's not about the belief in you. It's just you're starting a new skill. Okay. This is probably something you've never tried before, or even if you have, it's like we're getting a little bit more structure and context with it. So give yourself lots of grace. And I want you to say in these moments when you're having the precursor conversation of like setting this up, of like, hey, I'm going to try this new thing. Just say, I don't even know how to say this. I'm learning how to word this and what exactly this is. That's okay. Give yourself grace. And then when you're in the moment and you're doing it and you're practicing it, and you could say to yourself, oh my God, this is so terrifying. I've never done this before. I need to take a pause. I cannot engage in this conversation when I'm in this state. So I'm going to go and I'm going to regulate for a few minutes, and I'll come back. Let's come back in 30 minutes and pick this back up. And guess what? If you come back in 30 minutes and you can only talk for 2 minutes and then you need to go regulate again, you can do that. This is what I'm talking about. It gets a little messy. It's a little clunky and funky. It's okay. Prepare yourself for that. Do not have the expectation that this is just going to be just like I said. Oh, I say this and my partner says, oh, that sounds swell. Great. Go regulate yourself. And then I regulate and I'm back to a Zen state. And then I come back and my partner's in a Zen state. And then we just have this really Zen conversation. That is so unrealistic and it won't happen. Okay. So let's be realistic. Let's set ourselves up for success. And so we've regulated, and now let's say we come back to the conversation. How do you start the conversation? You just awkwardly walked away. You interrupted a very brilliant and charged argument, and now you're coming back to start it up again. What are you doing? So when you come back, you say, okay, I am noticing that this topic or this conversation is bringing up some things in me. So I want to pay close attention to my own emotions and what my body needs as we have this conversation. But I do think it's important for us to be on the same page and get some more clarity, and so we can understand each other better. That was big, right? Rewind that, write that shit down. The goal of repair is most certainly not to prove your point. It's not. The goal of repair is to connect. The goal of repair is actually reconnection. So I want you, when you come back to the conversation, I need that to be number one on your mind. Reconnection. Not how to prove I'm right, how to make them see me. The goal is reconnection. How can we both meet in the middle here? And I'm going to tell you, if you're listening to this podcast and you're taking notes on it, it's most likely going to be you who's going to go first in this little dance of repair and reconnection. And that is, you're going to listen. Yeah, you're going to let them talk. You're going to let them share their point of view, and they might still be charged. And if they are charged, you can say one of two things. There's two ways to, well, there's probably a lot more than that, but in this case, there's two ways I like to diffuse that charged energy. Either just recognizing it and just saying, would it be better to have this conversation later? Or do you feel like we can do this now with respect and kindness? And really, truly, that's not a condescending thing. It's like literally asking them, what do you feel you're capable of right now? Because we've all been in that state of mind. There's no judgment there. And so that's what I want your tone to be, right? Right now, is this a good time, or do you need another hour or a little bit more time? Let them make that choice for themselves. And then guess what? You're going to have to follow up and come back if they need space. Okay. And then the other way is to just say, I hear you're very upset. That makes sense to me. I can understand why this is so upsetting to you. This is not the first time we've had this conversation. That can get very frustrating to have to repeat this over and over again. I just want to tell you today, right now, my goal is to understand you better so that we can figure this out, so we're not continually repeating this, or we don't have to be here again. Okay? If those two things don't diffuse it, then you can just say, you know what? Let's come back to this tomorrow. Actually, can we do this over breakfast or before work or whatever? Okay. So you can just create that little space if that person is charged. All right. So you come back and you're here to what? The whole point of repair is what? Reconnection. So that's the point. That's your focus. That's the outcome. That's the goal we're looking for. So remember that, because things are going to get hairy. It's going to get a little squirrely in there. And they're going to be super, typically, people will be very defensive of their own point, right? They want to be right. They want to be seen. This is really important. You also want to be seen and heard and known and understood and loved. And so does your partner. So does your child. Everybody wants that. That's what we all want. We want to be connected on some level, and we all just want to be understood, for God's sakes. Okay. So your job, being the person who's open to conscious relationships, is to be the first to create that safe space for that person, your other person, to be understood and seen and heard and loved unconditionally through that shit. So take a deep breath. It's going to take some breath work. That's going to take some work. And what you're going to do is you're going to listen. You're going to ask inquisitive, not loaded, not, did you think that was a good idea? Not questions like that. We're asking open-ended questions like, can you tell me more about how you felt when I said that? What was it like for you when I didn't hear you? What was it like for you when I raised my voice? Can you tell me more about what you think would be helpful in that moment next time for me to do, for you to do, for you to have the ability to do what? Can you tell me more about what's familiar about this experience for you? I'd like to understand where you're coming from. Those are big questions, right? They're inquisitive. And guess what? You can hear it, right? Those questions are designed and built to gain understanding, not to prove that person's point of how crazy they are, or your point of how crazy they are. It's not to diminish them or minimize their experience. It's literally, you want information. You're trying to get data so that you can, for the love of God, understand why they're acting the way they do. Okay? Truthfully, this is how you get it. You have to calmly, clearly, and kindly show up to this space. Create a safe space for them to share with you. And so you're asking questions. And whenever you have a big emotion and they're acting a fool and everything's getting cray cray, I want you to focus on the end goal, which is connection, reconnection, and then find a question. That's a huge life skill to be able to find a question. How can you word what you're feeling and thinking and needing into a question that is kind and calm and clear for that person? Okay. That's there's the next phase of repair. Okay. So go and work on that. And when you're ready, let's dive into part 3.